Steelwool Studios is the main company responsible for creating mainline Five Nights at Freddy's games nowadays. And they've been responsible for some of the most popular games in the series' history, like FNAF Help Wanted and FNAF Security Breach, and also some of the most high quality, like FNAF Ruin and FNAF Help Wanted 2. Steelwool has surely made a name for themselves through the years working on the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and they don't show any signs of stopping anytime soon. But it's not very hard to see that their notoriety basically entirely comes from Five Nights at Freddy's. Which, by all means, is not a bad thing. They've been doing extremely well with FNAF, and they're clearly very passionate about it, and it's working out very well for them. But with the immense success that has come with their FNAF games, it's kind of left all their previous work in the dust. Ironically, very similarly to how Scott Cawthon's old games ended up after he started working on FNAF. But I think the difference there is that Scott Cawthon's old games have a very dedicated cult audience for them. I've never seen anybody talk about any of Steelwool's old projects, which is why I'm going to be going through Steelwool's entire back catalog of games that they worked on before FNAF Help Wanted, and finding out, are they any good? Should they be remembered as fondly as Scott's old games? What even is a Quar Battle for Gate 18? And I plan on finding all of that out today, but I feel like it's important to look at what Steelwool came from first. Steelwool Studios is an independent video game company that was primarily founded by ex-Pixar employees. You know, people who worked on things like Toy Story and Mr. Uncanny's Tickle Funhouse of Play Hour. And you can probably see the pieces already falling in place on why Steelwool is so good at visuals and animation. And despite mostly being associated with being a VR studio, Steelwool's first game was actually a 2.5D platformer. Flyhunter Origins is a weird little game where you play as a alien little guy named Zach, who is a janitor on the spaceship who accidentally unleashes all the cargo and has to go find it down on Earth. The cargo consisting of other alien people and flies, who are a very, very valuable creature to this species. And I honestly think the most accurate way to describe this game is it's simple. Very, very basic platforming. Deaths aren't really punished at all, and they're kind of just treated as a joke in this game, with the checkpoints literally just being cloning machines that bring back another version of your character. One thing I want to praise about this game is its visuals. For being a small indie game that came out all the way back in 2014, it's very impressive how this game looks. I'd say visually it's only a bit of a step above a Wii game, but I wouldn't really say this to the game's detriment, and the animation work in this game is genuinely spectacular and absolutely the highlight. The characters are animated so well. And I think for being a studio's first game, Flyhunter Origins is pretty good, until you get to one of the levels, but we're not there yet. This game has very, very, very simple platformer controls. It's literally walk around, you can jump, you can do a double jump with your jetpack, you can hit things with your fly swatter, and you can wall jump, and that's about it. There is a zapper gun, but I haven't gotten much use out of it, at least from what I've played so far. The game is split into episodes, and at the end of each episode, you go through this level where you kind of just have to fly and chase after the fly, which are a nice change of pace. And while I do think this game is overall of quality, it does struggle a bit to keep me hooked. The story is very basic and straightforward, and I don't really think it introduces much that keeps me hooked, and the gameplay isn't enough to keep that going. This is about as basic as a platformer can get gameplay-wise. There is not really much unique done here. There's a few simple mechanics like the zapper, but I don't really see them as that useful, and they're just kind of there because. Then there's some mechanics that are just straight up bad. I believe it was level 2, episode 3, which was when the game really started frustrating me. Before then, it was just kind of like, oh, whatever. I mean, it's not difficult, it's just kind of fine. But in the previous level, they had introduced this thing where there are these bugs that you can go on top of, and then they will slowly scoot forward once you're on top of them. This was introduced very clearly to the player. Apparently that's not how they're supposed to work, and it's only like that in the first level they're introduced to make it a bit easier for the tutorial, I guess? Because in the next level they appeared in, I stand on them, and they don't do anything. They just sit there in the water. So I thought the game might have been bugged, so I reset it multiple times, and I got very frustrated with this because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. Because how dare I assume that the bug from the previous level worked exactly the same as it did previously, and it wouldn't be completely different in this level for no reason. Because in this level, they don't move forward, and you're supposed to hop on top of them, then start walking onto the water, and then you just stay afloat? Which the subtitles in the tutorial kind of implied, but it's like, you show me the bug drifting me across the water, I'm gonna assume it's gonna do that every time. There's definitely some other things in this game that weren't perfectly explained to the player, but they were simple enough for me to understand. This is the only real one that pissed me off. This game has a problem of over-explaining everything in scientific terms instead of just telling you what you're supposed to do. There's another playable character in this game who is this girl alien who our protagonist Zach has a crush on, I think. And her levels are basically just challenge levels that you do without the fly swatter. And I don't really have a whole lot to say about them because without the fly swatter mechanic, it's mainly just about dodging enemies and making it to the end. You do get the zapper with it, but you can't actually kill things with the zapper. It's meant to freeze enemies. There's bad guys in this game who are called Slurp, and that reminds me of Fortnite, so I thought I should mention it. Something I noticed about this game is that the sound design is really crusty. Like, I'd go as far to say the sound design in this game is just straight up bad. Very samey music in the game, or sometimes there's just not music and it just sounds like this. The sound I particularly find quite amusing in the game is the footstep sound, which I'm just going to let it speak for itself here. So, is Flyhunter Origins a bad game? No, not by any means. It has a lot of very, very good qualities, and I can see a lot of work put into it. And it's a perfectly serviceable platformer game, but not much else. I wouldn't particularly recommend it, but it's a neat little piece of history, and it deserves to be recognized for that. You being tiny in all the earthy wilderness reminds me a lot of Pikmin in a way, which is cool. And for their first ever game, it probably exceeded my expectations, because I didn't really have any. But that being said, for my personal enjoyment, I'm not a big fan of this game. I see the vision, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but it's just not my cup of tea. Battle for Gate 18, and to be honest, I think this game might just be too niche for me to really get. And it doesn't help that it was very buggy on my end. I'm not sure if it was my headset's fault or the game's fault. It could be either or both. But this game just kept making me blink and teleport all over the place, and I didn't know what was going on half the time. It attaches this UI to your hand that doesn't do much, and you have to use the chalkboard on the other side of the map anyway to use your controls, so I don't know why the thing on your hand is even there in the first place. From what I can tell, this is just kind of a basic turn-based strategy, command your army to fight the other guys type game. I am definitely not the demographic for this type of game, but from what I played, the little I could play without the game bugging out constantly, it was just kinda weird and I didn't really get it. I do enjoy the little hub world though, with all the little guys walking around. I like exploring and seeing what they're all doing. The game definitely is not the prettiest looking game ever. Flyhunter Origins was a much higher quality feeling product than this. And to my knowledge, this is Steelwool's second game they ever made, and it is a VR game. And this seems pretty good for a first attempt at a VR game, but it was very, very buggy. And my VR headset usually acts up a little bit, but this game just broke everything. It could be because I'm using newer hardware and this game is quite old, but just not a very pleasant playing experience, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about this game because I don't feel like I got a sufficient idea of what it even is. I did not find out what Gate 18 is. I'm pretty sure Quar is where this takes place. I didn't read the game description, but the Quar are the alien guys, and it actually takes place in a place called Alwood. Is that how you pronounce that? I like how the game opens, how there's just like this going on. I don't know what this was, but this is how the game opened. These characters are funny, and that's probably my favorite part about this game. These are just funny guys, and I like them. There's this commander guy who's substantially larger than all the other ones, and I don't know what his deal is. He just kind of stares at you the entire time. So, in conclusion, how would I really How would I really weight it? Yeah, weight it. How would I rate Quar? Well, to be honest, I really didn't enjoy it very much, but that's probably just down to me not enjoying this type of game, and the fact that there were technical issues when I was trying to run this game that, now that I'm recording this after I had recorded the next game we're going to talk about, and I think the issues might have been exclusive to this game, because the game I'm going to play next from Steel Wool was very, very easy to boot up with VR. So I'm pretty convinced that it comes down to this game just not being all that well made or being outdated, one of the two. In most cases, I would say it's not fair to hold technical difficulties that probably come from the fact I'm using newer hardware in an older game, but they're still charging money for this on Steam. And if I genuinely paid money for a game that straight up just barely works, I feel like I have a right to complain about that. Because I'm pretty confident the issues I ran into with this game were not my headset. And even then, I didn't really find the game that fun, but also I didn't really get to play much of it. But from what I did play, this just genre of game isn't for me. Which is something that I cannot hold against it. But would I recommend it? No, not at all. I'd recommend Flyhunter much more. This is impressive for a very first attempt at a VR game, but it's really nothing to write home about. Now, Bounce, the next game I'm talking about here, is Steel Wool's next game, which released in 2016 as well. And for being released only a few months apart from Quar, this game is substantially better than what that game was. And albeit this is a much, much simpler game concept, it is super effective at what it sets out to do, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, this game's description on Steam does go out of its way to call out the fact that it is specifically made for the Vive and Oculus Touch, but it does still work very well with my modern headset. It actually works basically perfectly, because I don't think I ran into any issues while trying to play this game. And to my knowledge, this game doesn't really have a big story. It's basically just, you're in a spaceship and there's this little robot guy that rolls around, and your job is to help get him to the other side of the room, and that's basically the whole gist of it. It's a physics-based puzzle game where you have to take little different pieces that you can put together and have float in the air, and then you have to position them perfectly so that the ball will be able to roll all the way to the other side of the room where the next pad is. This is a very, very simple concept for a puzzle game, but I think it's very effective, especially with the fact that it's VR. Because if this game wasn't VR, I honestly think it'd be pretty boring, but since it is VR, trying to actually physically build all these courses for the ball to roll through is really, really fun. And I'd say as a puzzle game, this is great. If you have a VR headset, genuinely just go play this game, this is fun. It's got some strange music in the background. I'm not sure if this is an original OST or not, but it's kinda out of place, I guess. It's not something that bothers me, it's just something that I noticed. And the little robot guy that you gotta roll around is pretty cute. I like this character design a lot. And there's also these other more evil looking robots that show up sometimes, and I'm not really sure what their deal is, but they all look to be inspired by the style of Eve from WALL-E, which is definitely the Pixar influence wearing off, but it works here. This is a particularly immersive VR game in my opinion, and I think a big reason for that is just how physical everything is. Actually having to put together a course with your own two hands, then having to see how a physics object interacts with it, makes this game really immersive and really gets your brain going. Wouldn't mind seeing this concept revisited for a Help Wanted minigame or something. I'll be honest, going into this stuff, I thought that this would be the one that I was the most interested in, and I'm very happy to be proven right. This game is kind of awesome, and I'd 100% recommend it. And again, very, very impressive for being made so shortly after Quar, but you can tell they learned a lot in that time, because this game just feels so much more polished and nice. It's also wonderful visually. It's nothing too crazy, the art style is very simplistic, but it works extremely well. And being able to see out into the void of space is definitely a nice touch. Now, obviously, because I want this video to get out in time, I'm not playing through all these games 100%, but this one, I think I am going to go and play the rest of it, because I'm honestly really enjoying it so far. So yeah, definitely my favorite game so far in this list. If you have a VR headset, definitely go check it out. I'm a big fan of puzzle games like this, so I like this game a lot. So, Mars Odyssey is Steelwool's previously most well-known game before they made FNAF Help Wanted, and I'm immediately very skeptical of this game because it says it's mostly positive on Steam. Like, it's got a pretty good track record from what I've seen of it, but it says on the description that the playtime is 20 minutes, and that wouldn't be so bad, but the game is $10? $10 for a 20-minute game is kinda crazy, so this better be something, like, immaculate. But before we get into that game, which is the last game we'll be looking at today, there was another game that Steelwool helped develop on, but it's not exactly their game. And the game I'm talking about is a Ready Player One movie tie-in game called Ready Player One Oasis Beta, in which Steelwool Studios developed one of the minigames within it, which is Battle for Oasis, which is a VR shooter game. And this game looks like a train wreck. I mean, it has so many, it's like online functionality, and according to all the Steam reviews, it was just a crappy tie-in that they abandoned after a month. And again, with the reviews, this game has very, very bad reviews on Steam. But, you know, I want to try it out anyway because it's something Steelwool developed, and it's the last thing they developed before Help Wanted, so I feel like it was kind of important to mention here. But the game literally just will not run on my computer, which is fine because it's free. I mean, I can't really complain that a free game won't run because, you know, it was free. I didn't pay money for it, but it's kind of stupid. And also, this game is like 6 times the download size as all the other games. This is probably the download size of all the games I've played today combined, so yeah. I sadly will not be able to play Ready Player One Oasis Beta Battle for Oasis by Steelwool Studios. But anyway, on to Mars Odyssey. So I'm gonna just get this out of the way immediately. This game is not worth the price. Not at all. Not at all. I genuinely think that this game's price is abysmal. Literally every other game that I played today, I got substantially more playtime out of, and I didn't even beat them. This game, I beat 100% in 25 minutes. This game is absolutely starved for content, but I'll talk about what's here. Mars Odyssey is essentially an educational game that basically just teaches you about Mars and the solar system and stuff like that. It tends to waste your time by telling you to read things about the solar system and how the Mars tech works, rather than actually giving you gameplay. And the gameplay that is here is either absolutely nothing, or it's just really like sluggish, like the rover section where you have to control the little RC car. That was stupid. Also very, very unimpressed about how the actual environment of Mars looks like. This does not look like I'm actually on Mars. This is the least immersive environment they could possibly do. I can see the skybox. When I was going into this game, I heard the title Mars Odyssey. I figured I would be able to, like, drive around in the Mars rover and explore the planet, but no, this game is very on rails. And not on rails like a theme park ride. On rails, like, it takes you to a very specific section that's clearly a completely different level from the previous one, and then you just go into your space pod after you're done doing whatever you do there, then it takes you to another map. There was one cool visual in this game. I liked seeing the NASA space station in the distance. That's a pretty cool visual, and I liked it a lot. And the sandstorm was also pretty intimidating, so that was a pretty cool visual, although it doesn't actually hurt you if the sandstorm hits you. You just kind of sit there. It doesn't actually do anything to you. But credit where credit is due. This game has some cool visuals, and also the spaceship looks pretty good and everything. It's like, the game is like fine visually, it's just the actual surface of Mars is very, very lackluster. The game is basically just doing chores for NASA and fixing all the little machines they have on Mars. Something I noticed that this is an educational thing first and foremost, and a video game second, which is kinda super duper lame. And then the game just kind of ends, like you don't do anything in this game. You go around and fix things, and go back in your pod, then teleport, then do another thing, and then you see the NASA station, and the game just kind of ends. You can't do much in your spaceship, you can't actually explore Mars. There's not any way to die in this game. You cannot die in this game. There's no way to lose. You literally are just there until you finish the job, and that's it. And I can't even recommend this game to people who do care a lot about space stuff, because it's so expensive for barely any playtime. And it's not like this game is replayable. There's not like different things you can do. It's literally the same thing. Like I said before, this game is extremely on rails. It's also disappointing just how little interactivity there is with the environment in this game. Like, you can't pick up rocks and throw them on Mars, you can't do any of that, you can't like mess with the stuff in the spaceship. None of the buttons on the consoles in the spaceship actually do anything. You can't actually pick up any of the cups or tablets or anything. There is no interactivity. You are literally just plopped onto completely static maps that you just have to find the one thing that you can actually interact with. And they definitely improve with this with the FNAF Help Wanted games, because those games are extremely interactive. But this one just feels like there's barely anything. This came out after Bounce. I was gonna say that this game came out after Bounce, but it did not, so I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment. I'd say the best descriptor for this game is lame. It's not bad, it's not the worst thing in the world, it's just really, really lame. And I struggle to come up with really anything else to say about it. This game is kinda just there. You get it, you play it for like 20 minutes, you go, wow, that sure was a Mars Odyssey, and then you never touch it again. So, in conclusion, what did we learn in this video? Well, I did learn that I don't know how to read because Mars Odyssey came out way before Bounce, and I decided to review Bounce first for some reason. I don't know why, I guess I just assumed Mars Odyssey was their latest game because, like, it was the one that I've heard about before. But no, Bounce came out after Mars Odyssey, and with that perspective in place, I think this was a very interesting video to do, because it was really a good demonstration of Steelwool's improvement over time, and what led them to eventually making some of the best games in the FNAF series. This is clearly a very, very talented dev team, and while their earlier years were pretty bumpy, it led them to becoming very, very competent from a game development standpoint, which is very, very cool. And I enjoyed looking through this a lot. I thought this was a very, very interesting topic to talk about. I've never really seen anybody talk about these old games, so I feel like I'd like to give them a spotlight for a bit, even if I wasn't the most positive to all of them. And yeah, here's my ranking of all of them. I decided to rank all of them on a little tier list just because, you know, I thought it'd be interesting. So here's my ranking of all the games in this video. And I'll see you guys in the next one.